9th, 2013, 26-year-old Brandon Lawson ran out of gas on a rural Texas highway at 12:38 a.m. He called 911. What he said during that call has haunted investigators for over a decade. "Yes, I'm in the middle of a field, pushing guys over. There's one car here. I need the cops. They're chasing me out into the woods." 15 minutes later, when police arrived, Brandon was gone. His truck was found abandoned with the keys still in it. His phone was never used again. And despite massive searches, not a trace of Brandon Lawson has ever been found. What did Brandon see that night on that desolate highway? Who was chasing him? And why did a simple breakdown turn into one of Texas's most baffling disappearances? This is the haunting mystery of Brandon Lawson. And I warn you, the more you learn about this case, the less sense it makes. The Brandon Lawson case is unlike any other missing persons case you've encountered. It has everything that makes a mystery compelling. A frantic 911 call that no one can fully understand, multiple witnesses who saw different things, searches that found almost nothing, and theories that range from accident to murder to something far more sinister. Brandon disappeared from Highway 277 in rural Texas, one of the most desolate stretches of road in America. The area is so remote that help could be 30 minutes away. Cell service is spotty, and at night, you can drive for miles without seeing another soul. But on the night Brandon disappeared, that highway wasn't empty. According to the evidence, multiple people were out there. Multiple vehicles were on that road. And something happened that made a 26-year-old father of 4 vanish without a trace. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that Brandon's family, particularly his longtime partner Ledessa and his children, still search for answers. If you have any information about Brandon's disappearance, please contact the Coke County Sheriff's Office in Texas. Now, let's go back to 2013, to a young man whose life was complicated, whose nights started with a simple argument, and whose disappearance would leave more questions than answers. Brandon Lee Lawson was born on September 29, 1986, in San Angelo, Texas. He grew up in West Texas, a region known for its wide-open spaces, small towns, and tight-knit communities where everyone knows everyone. Brandon's early life was fairly typical for rural Texas. He attended school in San Angelo, played sports, had friends, and grew up with the values common in that area: hard work, family, and independence. By his early 20s, Brandon had met Ledessa Lofton, and they began a relationship that would span years. Together, they had 4 children, 3 sons and a daughter. Brandon loved his kids deeply. Those who knew him said his children were his world, and he'd do anything for them. But Brandon's life wasn't without struggles. Like many young adults, he faced challenges. Brandon worked various jobs, but steady, well-paying work in rural Texas can be hard to come by. He worked in oil fields, construction, and whatever jobs he could find to support his family. Money was often tight, and the stress of providing for 4 children weighed on him. Brandon had some minor run-ins with law enforcement. Nothing violent or serious, but enough to complicate his life. There were outstanding warrants for his arrest related to missed court appearances and unpaid fines. This is important because it would influence his decisions on the night he disappeared. While Brandon and Ledessa loved each other and were committed to their children, their relationship had typical stresses: financial pressure, the demands of raising 4 kids, and life's general challenges created tension. They argued sometimes like any couple, but by all accounts, they were working through things and trying to make their relationship work. Those close to Brandon have acknowledged that he struggled with substance use, particularly methamphetamine. This is a painful detail, but it's relevant to understanding what happened on the night he disappeared. Brandon was trying to get clean and stay clean, but it was an ongoing battle. Despite these challenges, the Brandon that friends and family described was a good person. He was friendly, outgoing, someone who would help anyone who needed it. He had a great sense of humor. He loved his kids fiercely. He was trying his best to navigate a difficult life. By August 2013, Brandon was 26 years old. He and Ledessa were living in San Angelo with their children. Brandon was working when he could find work, trying to stay out of trouble with the law, and focusing on being a good father. August 8th, 2013, started as a normal day. Brandon was at home with Ledessa and the kids. The weather was hot, typical Texas summer heat. There were no indications that anything unusual was about to happen. But as the evening approached, something would trigger a chain of events that would lead to Brandon's disappearance and one of the most mysterious 911 calls in history. To understand what happened to Brandon Lawson, we need to understand the hours before he disappeared. Every detail matters because the decisions Brandon made that evening set everything in motion. Brandon and Ledessa were at home. According to Ledessa's later statements, they got into an argument that evening. The exact nature of the argument has been described differently in various accounts. Some reports say it was about Brandon's struggles with substance use. Others say it was about finances or general relationship stress. Ledessa has said it wasn't a particularly serious argument, just the kind of disagreement couples have when stress builds up. But whatever the specifics, the argument escalated enough that Brandon made a decision. He was going to leave for a while to cool off. Brandon told Ledessa he was going to drive to his father's house in Crowley, Texas. Crowley is about 250 miles northeast of San Angelo, about a 3.5 to 4 hour drive. Brandon's father, Kyle Lawson, lived there, and Brandon apparently felt that going there would give him space to calm down and think. Ledessa later said she wasn't happy about Brandon leaving, especially that late at night, but she didn't try to stop him. She assumed he'd drive to Crowley, stay with his dad for a day or two, and then come home once they'd both had time to cool off. Brandon got into his red 1998 Nissan pickup truck and left the house around 9:45 p.m. But here's something crucial. Brandon had outstanding warrants. He knew if he was pulled over by police, he'd be arrested. This fact would influence every decision he made that night. Brandon headed northeast on Highway 67, which would take him toward Abilene and eventually toward Crowley. It's a long, lonely drive through rural Texas, miles and miles of darkness, with small towns scattered far apart. The route would take him through several small communities, Bronte, Robert Lee, and eventually toward Abilene. This is oil country, flat, sparse, with pump jacks dotting the landscape and not much else. As Brandon drove, he was apparently thinking about his situation, about his family, about his life. At some point during the drive, he decided to call his brother, Kyle, not to be confused with his father, also named Kyle. Brandon called his brother Kyle. According to Kyle's later statements, Brandon said he was on his way to their dad's house in Crowley. They talked for a bit. Nothing seemed particularly unusual about the conversation. Brandon seemed fine, maybe a little frustrated about the argument with Ledessa, but not panicked or scared. Kyle would later say that Brandon mentioned he was low on gas and would need to stop and fill up soon. This is important because it explains what happens next. Brandon was now on Highway 277, north of Bronte, Texas. This stretch of highway is particularly desolate. No houses, no businesses, just dark road cutting through ranch land. Cell phone coverage in this area is spotty at best. And then, around 12:30 a.m., Brandon's truck ran out of gas. He coasted to a stop on the side of Highway 277, near mile marker 9, between Bronte and the small community of Blackwell. It was pitch black. The nearest town with services was miles away, and Brandon's phone battery was getting low. This is where everything goes wrong. Brandon was now stuck on the side of a dark highway in the middle of nowhere. He had no gas. His phone was dying, and because of his outstanding warrants, calling the police for help was risky. Brandon made a decision. He'd call his brother Kyle again and ask him to bring gas. Brandon called Kyle and explained that he'd run out of gas on Highway 277. He asked Kyle to bring him gas. Kyle, who lived in the area, agreed. He said he'd get some gas and drive out to help Brandon. It would take him maybe 30 to 45 minutes to get gas and make the drive. Brandon said okay, he'd wait. But then something changed. Just 7 minutes after calling his brother, Brandon called 911. What Brandon said during that call would become one of the most analyzed, debated, mysterious pieces of evidence in any missing persons case. Let's talk about that call. Before we get to the 911 call itself, let's establish what we know about Brandon's situation at 12:38 a.m. when he made that call. Brandon was stranded on Highway 277 near mile marker 9. To give you a sense of how remote this is, if you stand on that highway at night, you might not see another car for 20 or 30 minutes. There are no streetlights. The nearest house is over a mile away. It's the kind of place where if something goes wrong, you're on your own. The area is ranch land, flat, with scrub brush and mesquite trees. During the day, you can see for miles. At night, it's just darkness in every direction. The timeline: 12:30 a.m., Brandon runs out of gas. 12:31 a.m., Brandon calls his brother Kyle for help. 12:38 a.m., Brandon calls 911 just 7 minutes later. What happened in those 7 minutes that made Brandon decide he needed to call 911? Remember, Brandon had outstanding warrants. Calling 911 meant police would come. Police would run his name. He'd be arrested. This wasn't something he'd do lightly. So what was so urgent, so frightening, that Brandon risked arrest to call for help? We can't know for certain what Brandon experienced in those 7 minutes, but based on his 911 call and later evidence, here's what likely happened. After calling his brother, Brandon was waiting by his truck on the side of the highway. He might have had his hazard lights on. He might have been standing outside the vehicle or sitting inside. Then, according to what he tells a 911 dispatcher, he saw something, or heard something, or encountered someone. Something happened that made him feel he was in danger. The call came in to Coke County 911 dispatch at 12:38 a.m. on August 9th, 2013. The dispatcher answered, and what followed was a conversation that, over a decade later, still hasn't been fully understood. Here's the thing about this 911 call. The audio quality is poor. The connection keeps breaking up. Brandon is speaking quickly and sometimes unclear. The dispatcher is having trouble understanding him. Multiple audio experts have analyzed this call. The FBI has analyzed it. Thousands of internet sleuths have listened to it frame by frame. And there's still disagreement about what Brandon is actually saying. But here's the generally accepted transcript of the call, with the parts that are unclear marked. Call begins. Dispatcher: 911. What's your emergency? Brandon: yes, I'm in the middle of the field out here. I just pushed some guys over. Unclear. Right here, going toward Abilene on both sides. My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here. Unclear. The first guy, unclear. There's one car here. The guy chased, unclear, into the woods. Please hurry. Dispatcher: okay, now run that by me one more time. Exactly where are you? Brandon, breathing heavily. I'm right here on 277, about a mile and a half south of unclear, possibly Bronte or 9. Dispatcher: okay, what's the problem there? Brandon: we're talking to him right now. We got him talking right now. I accidentally ran into him. We're talking to him. Unclear state trooper or Abilene here, but I need them. Dispatcher: is anybody hurt? Brandon: no, I just... Unkar? Nah, gulp. Dispatcher: all right, now what's? Brandon: cutting off. I ran into them accidentally. We ran into each other going down the side of the road on the side. Unclear. Dispatcher: uh-huh. Brandon: yeah, I have him talking right now. My truck ran into a stall or wall, and it's unclear. Dispatcher: okay, is anybody hurt? Brandon: no, everybody is fine. The call quality deteriorates further. Brandon: I need the cops. Unclear, pushing guys over. Unclear, in the woods. Unclear, please help. Dispatcher: so you're on 277 south of Bronte? Brandon: yes. Dispatcher: all right, we'll get somebody out there. Call ends. Lasted approximately 54 seconds. Now, let's break down what we can understand from this call and what remains unclear. The 911 call Brandon made is the key piece of evidence in this case, but it's also the most frustrating because so much of it is unclear. Let's analyze what we can understand and what it might mean. Clear statement number 1. My truck ran out of gas. This is straightforward. Brandon's truck ran out of gas on Highway 277. This matches what he told his brother Kyle just 7 minutes earlier. So we know this is true. Clear statement number 2. Location: Highway 277, south of Bronte. Brandon gives his location as Highway 277, south of Bronte, or possibly near mile marker 9. This is confirmed by where his truck was later found. So his location is accurate. Unclear disputed statement number 1. I just pushed some guys over. This is where it gets confusing. Some here pushed some guys over. Others here just got pushed over. Others hear something different entirely. If Brandon said push some guys over, it suggests he was in some kind of physical altercation. If he said got pushed over, it suggests someone pushed him. The FBI's audio analysis couldn't definitively determine which he said. Unclear disputed statement number 2. Going toward Abilene on both sides, asterisk, asterisk. What does this mean? Some interpretations. 2 groups of people, one on each side of the highway, both heading toward Abilene. Vehicles approaching from both directions. People running on both sides of the road. We don't know for certain. Unclear disputed statement number 3. There's one car here. Brandon mentions one car here. Whose car? Not his truck. He calls that a truck. So there's another vehicle at the scene. Who does it belong to? Very unclear statement. The first guy chased into the woods. This is heavily disputed. Some people hear, the first guy is chasing me into the woods. Others hear, I chased the first guy into the woods. Others hear variations of this. If someone was chasing Brandon, that's terrifying. If Brandon was chasing someone else, why? What was happening? Confusing statement. We're talking to them right now. Who is we? Is someone with Brandon? Or is he using we to mean him and the dispatcher? And who are them? The people he's talking about? Critical statement. I accidentally ran into them. Brandon says multiple times he accidentally ran into them. Most interpretations suggest he means he either 1. Hit someone with his truck accidentally. 2. Encounter people by accident. The dispatcher asks multiple times if anyone is hurt, and Brandon says no, everyone is fine. So if there was a vehicle accident, apparently nobody was injured. Toward the end of the call, when audio quality is very poor, many listeners believe they hear Brandon say something like, "They're chasing me," or "We're running," or "In the woods, please help." The desperation in his voice is clear. He's scared. He needs help urgently. The call ends. Total duration, about 54 seconds. The dispatcher has enough information to send help, but doesn't fully understand what's happening. What did the dispatcher think? Later reports suggest the dispatcher believed Brandon had been in a minor vehicle accident and needed police to file a report. The urgency in Brandon's voice didn't fully register, or perhaps the poor audio quality made it hard to grasp how serious the situation was. What happened next? Brandon's actions. After calling 911, Brandon did something interesting. He called his brother Kyle again. 12:40 a.m. Second call to brother Kyle. Just 2 minutes after the 911 call, Brandon called Kyle. According to Kyle's statements, Brandon said something like, "I ran into somebody. I need you to hurry with that gas." Kyle says Brandon sounded anxious but not panicked. He asked where Brandon was, and Brandon described the location as the same place, Highway 277 near mile marker 9. Kyle said he was gathering supplies and would be there as soon as possible, probably within 30 minutes. The call was brief, and then Brandon hung up. 12:40 a.m. to 1:10 a.m., the missing 30 minutes. This is a crucial window of time. Brandon made his last call at 12:40 a.m. The first officer arrived at the scene around 1:10 a.m. What happened during those 30 minutes? We have very little information. We know Brandon didn't call anyone else. His phone wasn't used again after 12:40 a.m. When officers arrived, Brandon was gone. The deputy arrives, 1:10 a.m. A Coke County Sheriff's deputy arrived at the location Brandon had described. The officer found Brandon's red Nissan pickup truck on the side of Highway 277, near mile marker 9. The truck was out of gas, as Brandon had said. The hazard lights were off. The keys were still in the truck. Brandon's phone was not in the truck. The driver's side door was unlocked. There was no sign of Brandon. The deputy looked around the immediate area with a flashlight, calling out for Brandon. No response. The highway was dark and empty. The deputy didn't see any other vehicles, didn't see any people, didn't see any evidence of an accident or altercation. It was as if Brandon had simply vanished into the night. Kyle arrives around 1:20 a.m. While the deputy was on scene, Brandon's brother Kyle arrived with a gas can. He expected to find Brandon waiting. Instead, he found a deputy and no Brandon. Kyle was confused. He just talked to Brandon less than an hour ago. Where'd he go? The deputy explained that they'd received a 911 call and found the truck, but no Brandon. Kyle told the deputy about his phone calls with Brandon. He mentioned that Brandon had said something about running into someone. Together, Kyle and the deputy searched the area more thoroughly. They walked the highway in both directions with flashlights. They called Brandon's name. They looked in the ditches and brush near the road. Nothing. No sign of Brandon Lawson anywhere. And that's when the terrible reality began to sink in. Brandon Lawson had disappeared. When someone goes missing from a remote highway in rural Texas at 1 a.m., the initial search is challenging. It's dark. The area is vast. And until daylight comes, your search capabilities are extremely limited. After Kyle arrived and confirmed Brandon was missing, the deputy called for additional units. More Coke County Sheriff deputies responded to the scene. With flashlights and spotlights from patrol vehicles, they conducted a preliminary search of the area. They walked both sides of Highway 277 for about a mile in each direction. They searched the ditches and immediate roadside. They looked for any evidence of an accident, skid marks, debris, blood. They checked for any signs of a struggle. They found nothing significant. Brandon's truck sat there on the side of the road, but Brandon himself was gone. Even in those first hours, deputies were trying to understand what happened. Several theories emerged. Theory 1, Brandon wandered off on foot. Maybe he was disoriented. Maybe he decided to walk toward help. Maybe he got lost in the darkness. Theory 2, someone picked him up. Maybe a passing motorist stopped and gave Brandon a ride, and he didn't realize police were looking for him. Theory 3, Brandon ran from police. Remember, Brandon had outstanding warrants. When he called 911, he knew police would come. Maybe when he saw the deputy arrive, he hid or ran to avoid arrest. Theory 4, something bad happened. Maybe the situation Brandon described in the 911 call, whatever it was, escalated after he hung up, and he was harmed or abducted. At daybreak, August 9th, 6 a.m., as the sun rose, a more extensive search began. This included multiple law enforcement agencies, Coke County Sheriff's Office, Texas Department of Public Safety, local police, volunteers from the community, search and rescue teams, tracking dogs. The area where Brandon disappeared is challenging to search. It's vast, miles and miles of ranch land. The terrain is rough, rocky, with thick brush and mesquite trees. There are ravines and gullies where someone could fall or hide. In August Texas heat, the temperature quickly climbed above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Search teams fanned out from Brandon's truck in all directions. They used tracking dogs, hoping the dogs could pick up Brandon's scent and follow where he went. The dogs did pick up a scent. They tracked from Brandon's truck into a nearby field, and then the scent trail disappeared. This suggested Brandon had walked into the field, but then either got into a vehicle. His scent was carried away by wind. Something interfered with the scent trail. What searchers found, day 1. Despite searching all day on August 9th, searchers found almost nothing of significance. No clothing, no phone, no signs of Brandon. There was one small discovery: some broken branches and disturbed grass in a field near where Brandon's truck was located. This could indicate someone walked through there recently, but it wasn't conclusive. Brandon's partner Ledessa and other family members arrived at the scene. Ledessa was devastated and confused. She'd expected Brandon to cool off and come home, and now he was missing under mysterious circumstances. Ledessa told investigators about the argument that led to Brandon leaving. She gave them permission to access Brandon's phone records and any other information that might help find him. Investigators listened to Brandon's 911 call multiple times. They tried to understand what he was describing. The unclear audio was frustrating, but certain things seemed clear. Brandon encountered other people or vehicles. Something happened that scared him enough to call 911. He mentioned people and chasing in woods. Investigators began looking for evidence of other vehicles in the area that night. Days 2 to 5, the search expands. For the next several days, the search continued. Helicopters flew overhead, looking for any sign of Brandon or disturbed areas. Ground teams searched an ever-widening radius from the truck. Dive teams checked nearby water sources, though they're limited in that area. Volunteers walked fields and ranch land with permission from landowners. The community rallied. Hundreds of people showed up to help search. Brandon's face was plastered on flyers, shared on social media, featured on local news. But despite all this effort, Brandon Lawson remained missing. Brandon's truck was towed and forensically examined. Investigators looked for fingerprints to see if anyone else had been in the truck, blood, or other biological evidence. Any signs of a struggle, personal items that might provide clues. The truck was clean. Brandon's belongings were mostly normal. Some tools, work clothes, typical truck stuff. Nothing that suggested foul play. Nothing that explained what happened. Brandon's phone records were pulled. They confirmed. 12:31 a.m. Call to brother Kyle, asking for gas. 12:38 a.m. Call to 911. 12:40 a.m. Second call to brother Kyle. After 12:40 a.m., Brandon's phone was never used again. It didn't ping any other cell towers. It wasn't turned back on. It simply went silent. This suggests either the phone died, battery ran out. The phone was turned off. The phone was destroyed. Brandon went somewhere with no cell service and couldn't make calls. Week 1 ends, still missing. By the end of the first week, the massive search began to scale back. Hundreds of man-hours had been invested. Vast areas had been searched, and there was simply no sign of Brandon. The case transitioned from an active search to an investigation. Where the initial focus had been find Brandon, it now became figure out what happened to Brandon. And that's where things got complicated. As the investigation into Brandon Lawson's disappearance continued, detectives encountered something unusual. Almost every piece of evidence raised more questions than answers. Let's examine the strange clues and conflicting information that make this case so perplexing. On the morning of August 9th, while searchers were combing the area for Brandon, something strange happened. Brandon's phone received an incoming call. Not an outgoing call from Brandon. An incoming call to Brandon's phone from an unknown number. The call went to voicemail because Brandon's phone was either off, dead, or out of service. But the fact that someone called Brandon's number that morning raised questions. Who was calling? Did someone know where Brandon was? Was it a wrong number? Was it someone involved in what happened to him? Investigators tried to trace the number, but the caller never came forward and the lead went nowhere. But it remains odd. Someone was trying to reach Brandon hours after he disappeared. In the days following Brandon's disappearance, a truck driver came forward with information. This trucker said he'd been driving on Highway 277 around 1 a.m. on August 9th, right around the time Brandon vanished. According to the trucker, he saw a pickup truck, possibly Brandon's, on the side of the road with hazard lights on. He also saw another vehicle nearby, described as a dark-colored SUV or truck. There appear to be people standing near the vehicles, possibly talking. Everything seemed normal enough that he didn't stop. This sighting is crucial because it suggests Brandon wasn't alone. There is another vehicle there, just as he'd mentioned in his 911 call. But who was in that vehicle? What were they doing there? And why didn't they come forward when Brandon went missing? Investigators tried to identify and locate the other vehicle, but with only a vague description and no license plate, the lead went cold. Remember the search dogs that tracked Brandon's scent from his truck into a nearby field? Let's talk about what they found in more detail. The dogs picked up Brandon's scent from his truck and followed it, east from the truck, into a field about 300 to 400 yards away. The trail seemed purposeful, not wandering, but walking with direction. The dogs tracked to a specific area and then lost the scent completely. Search and rescue experts say this suggests one of several things. 1. Brandon got into a vehicle. When a person gets into a car, the scent trail ends abruptly. 2. Environmental factors, wind, heat, or rain can eliminate a scent trail. 3. The trail ended at water, though there's no significant water source in that specific area. 4. Something happened to Brandon. If someone carried Brandon, the scent trail would end. The fact that the dogs tracked with confidence and then completely lost the trail suggests Brandon either got into a vehicle voluntarily or was taken. As experts continued analyzing Brandon's 911 call, some listeners claimed to hear additional voices in the background. Some people swear they can hear another man's voice saying something indistinct. What might be vehicle sounds? Background noise that could be multiple people talking. The FBI's audio lab analyzed the call and couldn't definitively confirm additional voices, but they couldn't rule it out either. The audio quality is just too poor. If there were other people present when Brandon called 911, who were they? Why didn't Brandon mention them more clearly? Were they threatening him? 1 week after Brandon disappeared, a local resident was walking their property, about 2 miles from where Brandon's truck was found, and discovered something. A piece of torn clothing caught on a fence. The person reported it to police. The clothing was collected and tested. Unfortunately, the clothing couldn't be definitively matched to Brandon. DNA testing was inconclusive. The clothing could have been there for weeks or months before Brandon's disappearance. Many people walk and hunt in that area, so clothing snagged on fences isn't uncommon. But the discovery raised hopes. Maybe Brandon had walked farther than anyone thought. Maybe he'd torn his clothes on that fence. Maybe he was nearby. Additional searches in that area found nothing else. Brandon's brother Kyle, who'd spoken to Brandon twice that night, had some inconsistencies in his statements that raised eyebrows. In his initial statement to police, Kyle said Brandon sounded fine, maybe a little anxious during their calls. Later, Kyle said Brandon sounded really scared during the second call after the 911 call. Kyle also mentioned that when he arrived at the scene and talked to the deputy, he thought he smelled a strange chemical smell in the area. He couldn't identify what it was, but he found it odd. Some people have speculated that Kyle knows more than he's saying. Others believe Kyle's inconsistencies are simply the result of stress and trauma from losing his brother. Kyle has maintained he told investigators everything he knows. Here's something that isn't widely known. Brandon's 911 call wasn't the only 911 call from that area that night. According to reports, there was another 911 call made from the same general area around the same time. The caller hung up before saying anything, or the call was dropped before dispatch could gather information. Was this call related to Brandon? Was it Brandon trying to call again? Was it someone else involved in whatever happened? Or was it just a coincidence? Maybe someone else having car trouble in that rural area? This second call has never been fully explained, and details about it remain murky. Some investigators don't even acknowledge it exists, while others say it's part of the case file. Brandon's partner Ledessa has been cooperative with investigators throughout, but some aspects of her story have evolved over time. Initially, Ledessa described the argument she and Brandon had as minor, just a typical couple fight. Later interviews suggested the argument was more serious, possibly related to Brandon's substance struggles and their relationship stress. Ledessa has said that Brandon was trying to get clean and that the stress of that, combined with financial pressures, was overwhelming him. Some people have questioned whether Ledessa is telling the complete truth about what happened that night. Others believe she's being honest, but is traumatized and her memories have been affected by stress. Law enforcement has never indicated that Ledessa is a suspect or person of interest. She passed a polygraph test. She's cooperated fully. But internet sleuths continue to debate whether she knows something she hasn't shared. One frustrating aspect of this case, the lack of surveillance footage. Highway 277 in that area has no traffic cameras. The nearby businesses are miles away, and their cameras don't reach the highway. The few gas stations in the region either didn't have cameras or their footage didn't show Brandon's truck. In 2013, dash cams weren't as common as they are today. Ring cameras and home security systems weren't ubiquitous. So there's virtually no video evidence of Brandon's journey that night or what happened on that highway. Some investigators have theorized that Brandon's disappearance is related to drug activity. Evidence supporting this theory includes Brandon's acknowledged struggle with methamphetamine. The area where he disappeared is known for drug trafficking routes. His confusing 911 call could suggest he was under the influence or paranoid. The mysterious other vehicles and people could have been related to a drug deal gone wrong. However, toxicology can't be done without a body, and Brandon's family disputes that he was using drugs that night. They say he'd been clean and was trying to stay that way. Another theory is that Brandon, knowing he had warrants, panicked when he called 911 and realized police were coming. Evidence includes he had multiple outstanding warrants. Getting arrested would mean jail time and being away from his kids. He'd been in legal trouble before and knew the system. When the deputy arrived, Brandon was nowhere to be found. But this theory has problems. Why call 911 at all if you're going to run? And where would Brandon go on foot in the middle of the night with no phone, no money, and miles from anywhere? After weeks of searching and investigating, here's what physical evidence was found. Brandon's truck, keys inside out of gas. Brandon's phone, never found. Possibly his clothing, unconfirmed. No blood evidence. No signs of struggle at the truck. No body. No conclusive evidence of what happened. The lack of evidence is itself evidence. It suggests either 1. Brandon walked away voluntarily and successfully vanished. 2. Brandon was picked up by someone and taken elsewhere. 3. Something happened to Brandon that left no trace. 4. Brandon met with an accident in an area that hasn't been searched. None of these options fully fits all the evidence. Over the past decade, investigators, family members, true crime enthusiasts, and internet sleuths have developed numerous theories about what happened to Brandon Lawson. Let's examine each major theory, the evidence supporting it, and the problems with it. Theory number 1. Brandon was the victim of foul play. This is what Brandon's family believes and what many investigators suspect. The scenario: after running out of gas, Brandon encountered someone or multiple people on Highway 277. Whatever interaction occurred, whether it was a robbery, a drug deal gone wrong, a case of wrong place/wrong time, or something else, resulted in Brandon being harmed. His body was either buried in the vast ranch land surrounding the highway, disposed of in a way that prevented discovery, or taken elsewhere entirely. The 911 call captures Brandon's fear in those final minutes. The mention of chasing and guys and would suggest he knew he was in danger. Evidence supporting this: Brandon's terrified tone on the 911 call. The mention of other people/vehicles. The sudden cessation of phone usage. The fact that Brandon's phone and body have never been found. The trucker's sighting of another vehicle. Brandon's scent trail leading away from the truck, then vanishing, suggesting he got into a vehicle. Evidence against this: no evidence of foul play at the scene. No blood, weapons, or signs of struggle. No witnesses to an assault or abduction. No credible suspects identified. Massive searches found no body or grave site. Subtheory 1A. Drug deal gone wrong. Some believe Brandon was meeting someone for drugs or stumbled upon a drug transaction and was killed to keep him quiet. West Texas is known for drug trafficking routes. Highway 277 is remote and would be a good location for a drug deal. Brandon's substance struggles mean he might have been there intentionally. But Brandon's family strongly disputes this, saying he wasn't using and wouldn't have been meeting dealers. Subtheory 1B. Random attack. Perhaps Brandon was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe someone saw a stranded motorist as an easy target for robbery or worse. But this seems unlikely. Why would someone drive down a remote highway at 1 a.m. specifically looking for victims? And why no evidence? Probability. Medium high. Most investigators lean toward this theory. Theory number 2. Brandon had a mental health crisis or medical emergency. The scenario. Brandon was under severe stress, relationship problems, legal troubles, substance struggles, financial pressure. When his truck ran out of gas, something snapped. He experienced a mental health crisis, possibly drug-induced paranoia, or medical emergency like a seizure or stroke. The 911 call captured his confused, panicked state. After the call, disoriented and frightened, Brandon wandered into the vast Texas landscape. He collapsed from exposure, dehydration, or medical complications. His body is somewhere in the thousands of acres of ranch land that have never been thoroughly searched. Evidence supporting this. Brandon was under enormous stress. If he'd used drugs recently, paranoia is a side effect. The confusing, frantic nature of his 911 call could indicate mental distress. People experiencing mental health crises often flee from help. In the August Texas heat, exposure can kill in hours. Thousands of acres remain unsearched. Evidence against this. Brandon sounded scared, not confused or incoherent. He accurately described his location. His brother said he sounded fairly normal minutes before. Search dogs should have found him if he collapsed nearby. This doesn't explain the other vehicle/people he mentioned. Probability. Low-medium, possible, but doesn't fit all evidence. Theory number 3. Brandon ran from police and died by accident. The scenario. Brandon called 911, but immediately regretted it when he remembered his warrants. When he saw the deputy's headlights approaching, he panicked and ran into the dark. In his rush to flee, he fell into a ravine, down a well, into a hidden hole, or suffered some other accident. His body is in a location that hasn't been found despite searches. Evidence supporting this. Brandon had multiple warrants and reason to fear arrest. He wasn't at the truck when police arrived. His scent trail shows he walked away from the truck. Accidents in rural darkness are common. Old wells, ravines, and hidden dangers exist to the area. Evidence against this. Why call 911 at all if you're going to run? Brandon's tone suggested fear of immediate danger, not long-term worry about warrants. The deputy arrived quickly. Brandon would have had to disappear in minutes. Extensive searches should have found him. Probability. Low. Doesn't explain the circumstances of a 911 call. Theory number 4. Brandon voluntarily disappeared. The scenario. Overwhelmed by life's pressures, relationship problems, substance struggles, legal issues, fatherhood stress, Brandon saw an opportunity to vanish and start over. The running out of gas situation presented a chance. Maybe he'd already arranged for someone to pick him up. Maybe he hitchhiked away. Maybe he planned it all. He's alive somewhere, living under a different identity, having chosen to leave his old life behind. Evidence supporting this. Brandon was under enormous stress. People do sometimes disappear voluntarily. No body has been found. The timing, running out of gas far from home, could have been planned. Evidence against this. Brandon loved his children deeply and wouldn't abandon them. He had no money to start over. His phone has never been used. No activity on his identity since 2013. The 911 call clearly shows he was frightened. He was trying to get help from his brother, suggesting he wanted to go home. Probability, very low, doesn't fit Brandon's character or the evidence. Theory number 5. The staged disappearance, the dark theory. The scenario. Some internet theorists have suggested that Brandon's disappearance was staged, possibly by someone who wanted to harm him or by Brandon himself for insurance or other reasons. This theory suggests that the 911 call was deliberately confusing, that the whole scenario was orchestrated to create a mystery. Evidence supporting this. The confusing nature of the 911 call could seem scripted. The lack of any physical evidence is suspicious. The timing and location are almost too convenient. Evidence against this. There's no evidence of any conspiracy. Brandon had no life insurance policy. His genuine fear on a 911 call seems impossible to fake. This requires believing multiple people are involved and lying. Law enforcement has found no evidence of staging. Probability, extremely low, pure speculation without evidence. Theory number 6. Brandon witnessed something he shouldn't have. The scenario. Brandon ran out of gas at the wrong time and wrong place. He witnessed illegal activity, drug trafficking, a crime in progress, something sensitive, and was eliminated as a witness. The 911 call captures him realizing he's in danger. The people involved made sure Brandon disappeared permanently. Evidence supporting this. The area is known for drug trafficking. Brandon's mention of multiple people and vehicles. The quick, complete disappearance suggests planning. No evidence left behind suggests professional criminals. Evidence against this. Why would criminals be conducting business on a highway where passing motorists could see? This requires a significant planning and execution. No criminal organizations have ever been linked to the case. Probability, low, dramatic but not well supported. The most likely scenario, investigator consensus. Most law enforcement officials working the case believe this is what happened. Brandon ran out of gas. Shortly after, he encountered one or more people, possibly someone who stopped to help, possibly someone already in the area for other reasons. An interaction occurred that made Brandon feel threatened. Maybe it started friendly and turned dangerous. Maybe he recognized the person as someone he shouldn't trust. Maybe he witnessed something he wasn't supposed to see. Brandon called 911 because he was genuinely afraid. During or shortly after that call, something happened, whether a fight, an attack, an accident during a struggle, that resulted in Brandon's death. His body was hidden or disposed of in the vast ranch land, where it remains undiscovered despite extensive searches. The person or people responsible have never come forward and may never be identified. Why this theory fits. Explains Brandon's fear on the 911 call. Explains the sudden end of phone usage. Explains why no trace of Brandon has been found. Explains the trucker's sighting of another vehicle. Explains the scent trail ending abruptly. Doesn't require conspiracy or elaborate planning. But even this theory has gaps. And without Brandon's body, without witnesses, without suspects, it remains just a theory. Brandon Lawson has been missing for over 11 years as of 2024. During that time, the case has had periods of intense activity followed by long stretches of silence. Let's examine the major developments since 2013 and where the case stands today. 2014 to 2015, the first years. In the months and years immediately following Brandon's disappearance, the case remained active. Investigators followed leads, conducted additional searches, and kept the case in the public eye. Ledessa and Brandon's family held vigils on anniversaries of his disappearance. They distributed flyers. They kept social media pages active. They refused to give up hope. But as time passed with no breaks in the case, media attention faded. The investigation continued, but with no new evidence, there was little progress. 2016, the podcast attention. True crime podcasts began covering Brandon's case, bringing new attention and new audiences. Thousands of people heard the 911 call for the first time and began analyzing it themselves. This had both positive and negative effects. Positive: renewed public interest. Potential new witnesses coming forward. Amateur sleuths examining evidence from new angles. Keeping pressure on investigators to keep working the case. Negative: conspiracy theories proliferating. Harassment of family members by internet detectives. Misinformation spreading. Ledessa and the family being questioned and accused online. 2017 to 2018, new technology, new hope. Advances in search technology and forensic analysis gave investigators new tools. Ground-penetrating radar, drone searches, and improved DNA analysis methods meant evidence could potentially be discovered that had been missed before. Several additional searches were conducted using these new technologies. Specific areas of interest were re-examined based on analysis of cell phone data and the scent trail evidence. Nothing significant was found, but investigators maintained that new technology might still provide answers. August 2018, the 5-year anniversary. The 5-year anniversary of Brandon's disappearance brought renewed media coverage. TV news programs feature the case. National crime shows discussed it. Ledessa gave interviews pleading for anyone with information to come forward. She said not knowing what happened to Brandon was torture. She said their children deserved to know what happened to their father. The sheriff's office released a statement saying the case remained open and active, and they were still following leads. 2019, the possible remains. In early 2019, human remains were discovered in a rural area of West Texas, about 50 miles from where Brandon disappeared. The discovery immediately sparked speculation. Could this be Brandon? The remains were sent for analysis. DNA testing was conducted. The family waited, hoping for closure, even if the news would be devastating. The results came back. The remains were not Brandon Lawson. They belonged to someone else, another person who died in the Texas wilderness, but not Brandon. The disappointment was crushing. But in a strange way, the family took some comfort in the fact that at least another family got answers, even if they didn't. 2020, the 7-year mark in COVID-19. As Brandon's case reached its 7th year, the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted everything, including missing persons investigations. Searches couldn't be conducted. Resources were diverted to pandemic response. The case essentially paused, but online interest in the case exploded. With people stuck at home, true crime content surged. Brandon's case was analyzed on countless YouTube channels, TikToks, Reddit threads, and podcasts. A new generation learned about Brandon Lawson and began trying to solve the mystery. 2021 to 2022, the social media investigation. TikTok and YouTube creators began creating detailed breakdowns of the 911 call. Some claimed to hear new words and phrases. Some created elaborate maps and timelines. Some developed complex theories involving multiple suspects. While much of this was well-intentioned, it also led to accusations against innocent people, harassment campaigns, conspiracy theories becoming accepted as fact, the family dealing with amateur investigators contacting them constantly. Ledessa has had to repeatedly ask people to respect the family's privacy and to not harass potential witnesses or spread unfounded theories. 2023, the 10-year anniversary. August 9th, 2023, marked 10 years since Brandon's disappearance. This milestone brought the most significant media coverage since the initial disappearance. Major news outlets cover the case. Documentary producers expressed interest. The family held a memorial gathering. Ledessa gave a heartbreaking interview. 10 years. 10 years of not knowing. 10 years of our children growing up without their father. 10 years of wondering every day what happened to him. The sheriff's office announced they were doing a comprehensive review of the case, looking at all evidence with fresh eyes, seeing if anything had been missed. 2024, where we stand today. As of 2024, Brandon Lawson's case remains officially open and unsolved. Here's the current status. What we know. Brandon called 911 at 12:38 a.m. on August 9th, 2013. He was on Highway 277, out of gas. He reported being in danger from other people. Within 30 minutes, he had vanished. No trace of Brandon has been found in 11 years. What we don't know. Who Brandon encountered that night. What exactly happened to him. Where his body is, if he's deceased. Whether someone is responsible for his disappearance. Why no evidence has ever been found. Coke County Sheriff's Office maintains the case is active. They have stated they receive occasional tips, which they investigate. They believe Brandon met with foul play. They believe someone knows what happened. They are willing to re-examine the case if new evidence emerges. LaDessa has tried to move forward while never giving up hope. She's raised their 4 children as a single mother. She keeps Brandon's memory alive for the kids. She updates Brandon's missing persons social media when there's news. She's worked with other families of missing persons. She's advocated for better resources for missing persons cases in rural areas. Brandon's children, who were very young when he disappeared, are now teenagers and young adults. They've grown up with the mystery of their father's disappearance as a constant presence in their lives. Private investigators have occasionally worked the case pro bono. True crime communities continue to analyze evidence. Periodic searches are conducted when new technology becomes available. The reward for information leading to Brandon remains active, currently around $10,000. The true crime community continues to debate what happened. The most recent discussions focus on reanalysis of a 911 call with AI-enhanced audio cleaning, examination of cell tower data with modern techniques, discussion of whether enough was searched in the immediate aftermath, speculation about whether someone involved has since died, taking the truth with them. After 11 years, the reality is this. Without new evidence, without someone coming forward, without Brandon's body being found, this case may never be solved. The vast Texas landscape where Brandon disappeared has likely claimed his remains, if he's out there. Time, weather, animals, all conspire to erase evidence. Where someone knows what happened and has kept that secret for over a decade, whether from fear, guilt, or simply not realizing what they know is important, that person has never spoken up. What would solve this case? Investigators believe several things could break this case open. 1. Someone coming forward. The most likely scenario is that someone knows something. Maybe they gave Brandon a ride. Maybe they saw something. Maybe they know who was involved. A single tip could solve everything. 2. Finding remains. If Brandon's body is discovered, even after all these years, modern forensic techniques could potentially determine how he died and possibly identify suspects. 3. Deathbed confession. As time passes, people involved in crimes sometimes confess when facing their own mortality. This is how many cold cases are solved. 4. Technology advances. DNA technology, satellite imagery analysis, or other future technologies might provide new ways to examine old evidence. 5. Renewed publicity. Sometimes a case being featured on a major platform brings it to the attention of exactly the right person who has the missing piece of information. If you were in the area of Highway 277 near Bronte, Texas, on the night of August 8th to 9th, 2013, if you saw a red Nissan pickup truck on the side of the road, if you saw any vehicles or people in that area, if you gave someone a ride that night, if you know anything, even something that seems unimportant, please contact the Coke County Sheriff's Office. You can remain anonymous. Even the smallest detail could be the piece that finally solves this mystery. Brandon's family deserves answers. His children deserve to know what happened to their father. and Brandon deserves to be found and laid to rest. The Brandon Lawson case is one of those mysteries that feels like it should be solvable. We have a 911 call. We have a timeline. We have a last known location. We have witnesses to some of what happened. But somehow, despite all of this, Brandon vanished so completely that 11 years of searching has found nothing. It's a case that reminds us how vast and unforgiving the Texas landscape is. How easy it is to disappear in rural America, where help is far away and visibility is limited. How many places there are where a body might never be found. It's also a case that reminds us that sometimes evil or tragedy happens in the most mundane circumstances. Brandon was just a guy who ran out of gas. That's it. That's all he did wrong. He didn't fill up his tank before leaving on a long drive. And somehow, that simple mistake led to him vanishing forever. What do you think happened to Brandon Lawson? Do you believe he was the victim of foul play? Do you think he's out there in the Texas wilderness waiting to be found? Do you think someone knows what happened and has kept it secret all these years? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments. Brandon's family sometimes reads these discussions, so please be mindful that this is a real person, a real father, whose children are still searching for answers. If this deep dive into Brandon's case affected you, please subscribe to the Vanish Files. We investigate the cases that remain unsolved, the people who deserve to be remembered, and the mysteries that refuse to be forgotten. Like this video to help keep Brandon's case in the public eye. Share it with anyone who might have information. You never know who might see it and remember something crucial. In our next investigation, we'll examine another disappearance that defies explanation. Another person who vanished, leaving behind only questions. Until then, stay curious, stay compassionate, and remember that every missing person is someone's child, someone's parent, someone who matters. This has been the Vanish Files. Thank you for helping us keep Brandon Lawson's memory alive.